Hallo. Wo ist die 60? 50. 260. Okay, maybe take a map from time to time. We're here, we go through here, and then we go in here. That's the plan. Okay? Feels a bit like Ocean's 11 or 12 or 13 or 14. Where are they actually with Ocean's 11? Ocean's 100. It's like in Back to the Future when they had Jaws Part 9. 60.
Den 19. Stock.
Danke. The guy who we meet is a former hostage negotiator, Matthias Schranner. I met him a couple of years ago. He was on stage and his speech was one of the best ones I've ever seen. And then I said, I never ever want to speak after this guy, never, because it was so good. And then I had a speech in Zurich, in a pretty cool location in Dolda for GQ. And he was the speaker right before me, and I'm like, that's the only situation and then I wanted to have. And I told him that story and said, I want you in the podcast and I want to record a video with the 5 most important negotiation tips that you could use for any negotiation at home, in a hostage situation, hopefully not, or in negotiations in the company. So that's the guy we're gonna meet. Guten Morgen. El Capo, grüß dich, schön dich zu sehen.
Here we go.
So I just already made the introduction. We just recorded a podcast and Matthias took the time this morning. And just to give you a little bit of background, you have a background in hostage negotiation, like really difficult situations as a police officer or special forces.
Special forces, yeah.
So I learned so much about negotiation, and actually I learned to dive into the conflict and to like that. And to me, this has much more than just like difficult negotiations for like price or anything. It's about work. I want to change how I work, but it's also about private life. So give us the real condensed knowledge as fast as you can. What are the top 5 things in negotiation?
One sentence.
You can take more than that, but like I learned so much from that, and if that's one video you could use for negotiations and someone sees it and says, okay, that's what you should watch.
So I think most people try to avoid a deadlock scenario in a negotiation. Most people try to achieve a win-win agreement, and which is fine. Anyway, sometimes someone is going against you. And then you have to accept that's a conflict and have to solve it. And what we see very often in most negotiations, most managers, they try to avoid a deadlock scenario. They do everything they offer compromise, they postpone a decision because they are so afraid about a real conflict. What I have learned in my life and based on my personal experience, it's better to create a conflict. It's better to create a deadlock scenario, because if you create a deadlock, then it's a power struggle. Then you have to be well prepared. You need to know your walkaway position. You need to know what you want, and this is why, based on our experience, this is our philosophy. Don't avoid a deadlock. Create it.
So dive into the conflict, like the conflict.
Exactly.
Then you said you actually have to ask yourself, do you want to negotiate?
If there's another option, don't do it. A negotiation is always a conflict, it's always a power struggle. It's very often that you damage a relationship, and this is why you need to be well prepared. You need to know what you want, and there are 2 elements. Number 1 is it's the target and your strategy, which is, from our perspective, the best approach to negotiation is to play hardball. So this is what I want. The other element is the tone of a negotiation. You have to be respectful. You have to be very, let's say, charming in a very soft tone. And very often people mix it up. If you mix it up, then you fail. So what you need to know, okay, this is what I want in a very nice, respectful tone.
if there are certain words, and we talked about emotions and like you were under pressure and the hostage taker like puts a gun at you, or someone says, if you do that, I go, I leave you. What are things you can do to like calm down emotions to then start thinking and negotiating again for yourself?
So number one is, if someone is telling you, if you don't, I will leave you, or if I don't get a getaway car, I will kill the hostage. The first signal is, these guys, they want to negotiate.
Okay. That's good.
So that you know they are dependent. Otherwise, they wouldn't negotiate.
Yeah.
Second, if they come up with a threat, like if you don't do what I want, there will be a negative consequence. Don't talk about the negative consequence. Talk about common interests. So we are here. We are in the same situation. Yeah, we do have the same target. We want to reach an agreement. So never talk about the conflict. Talk about common interests, and try to avoid a commitment at the beginning. Because if you commit yourself too early, you will lose your face at the end.
What is the most important word you train? And I know everyone who uses that word, I know he has been in a training with Schranner Negotiation Institute. I know
exactly.
that.
It's one word which is our logo. It's difficult. Difficult means, so if you come up with an irrational demand, then I say difficult and I count to 3. Difficult means you want a conflict, be my guest, you will get a conflict. I won't postpone it, I won't walk away, I won't offer a compromise. I'm here, I'm ready to negotiate.
Without like saying yes or no or like giving anything.
Yeah, and very often in our culture, you know, in the German-speaking cultures, we very often go against them by saying, but.
Right.
You don't understand, you have to understand, it's completely different, you didn't get it. And so it's talking about right or wrong, which is always a disaster.
You better say and.
Exactly.
And go with the word. I learned that from you. Okay. So, if you look at the word at the moment, and that helped me to like clarify a lot of things, people often tend to think, oh, it's all getting more complicated, crazy people out there. And you say, why? Because it's pretty clear in terms of negotiation. We have the US president, we have the European Union, we have Putin, and it's all pretty obvious. Why is that?
Well, I think most people don't understand the principles of negotiation. And you mentioned the American president, Mr. Trump. A lot of people believe he's unpredictable. From my perspective, from a negotiation perspective, he's very predictable because he's always using the same tactic. And all the European Union, they, from a negotiation perspective, it's great what they did with the Brexit negotiations, because they are still unified. They are speaking with one message, and so they achieved their goal because they didn't leave.
And why do you think is Trump predictable? Like, what do you think?
It's always the same. So it's always, number one is always a tweet. So
with the typo, most of the cases with the typo.
Exactly, with the typo. That's the topic. I build a wall. I cancel the NAFTA agreement. That's number one. Number two is always he's destroying something and offering a negotiation. So, I cancel this agreement. And then second, and I'm ready to negotiate a new one. Most people react on the first message, which is, oh, you want to cancel this agreement. It's better to focus on the second message, which is, oh, you want to negotiate, which is great. So everything is fine.
And last thing, what is a good way to build up this negotiation attitude? Because I think when it comes to like new work and how the world is changing, having this attitude to say, I want a conflict and I negotiate, and it's perfectly fine. I don't give a reaction, I give a response. Like, what is a good way to train?
As you mentioned it, reaction is always, it's always reacting on something. You're in a justifying, defending position. It's better, you need to know what you want, what's your target, what do you want, and you need to think what is the best way to create a conflict. The best way, we call it put the fish on the table. So tell them what you want, wait a little bit, and then start to negotiate. And it's definitely better to put the fish on the table, to create this conflict, to show the other party, I'm well prepared, I want a conflict, I don't want to avoid a conflict, and let's negotiate. Because if I put my fish on the table, I force you you have to put your fish on the table as well, and then we are in a conflict, negotiation, and then we will find an agreement.
I like that. Make sure you check out Matthias' channel, Schranner Negotiation Institute, and also the website, because you guys do international trainings for corporations, for teams, for difficult situations. We learned a lot in my company, and I learned a lot personally from the podcast, from all the talks, so that was really a great experience. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
I always forget the end card. Subscribe here, and there's another video. Most likely we link something that is coming from Matthias' channel. I think that should be possible also on our channel.